All right, welcome back to Picks with me, your host. Moving on to week five, going over the week four results quickly. Seahawks beating the Cardinals. That game was a toss-up, could have went either way. Cardinals had a chance to win that game and didn't. Vikings losing to the Steelers in Ireland. Um, Steelers putting on a good offensive game. I thought that the Vikings defense would be enough to inhibit and keep it close. Vikings really struggled on the offensive line, really kind of got dominated by the Steelers front seven. So that was a huge difference in the game. Patriots absolutely blowing out the Panthers, um, dropping a 40 burger. Pretty impressive, complete win. Um, Still have some way to go. I mean, when you ascend to the next level, you expect to beat the bad teams, and I think that's what the Patriots did. Um, Falcons, Commanders, Falcons both ways. One, no surprise there. Marcus Mariota starting. Jaden Daniels coming back this week. Bills Saints. Bills by 15 and a half didn't cover, but they won. That was the survivor pool pick of the week. So if you took that, you won. You're still alive. No surprise that the Bills beat the Saints, of course. Um, but the Bills haven't been able to cover more than a 12-point spread in quite some time. So, Lions beating the Browns. Browns have a good defense, of course. Lions are really just too much to match on the offensive side of the ball. Then this week, of course, we have Dylan Gabriel stepping in for Joe Flacco. Chargers was my pick. Of course, they lost that game. Jackson Dart making his debut, playing some solid football. Giants, of course, lose Malik Neighbors going forward for the rest of the season, which is certainly a tough loss. Um, Told you this was potentially a trap game, and that's kind of where the Chargers historically have tripped right before the finish line in weird kind of games like this in the past. So, interesting to see that Giants actually pulled through with a rookie quarterback when really the odds were kind of stacked against them. Buccaneers, they certainly had a chance. They're going to be without Bucky Irving, and they were without Mike Evans as well. The Eagles on the revenge game go to 4-0 after their last loss actually came to the Bucks in Tampa last year. So, um, you know, Bucks kind of injury ridden right now. The Eagles playing decent enough football to stay undefeated. Texans Titans. I picked the Titans to cover divisional game, struggling Texans team, especially on the offensive line. Uh, Texans won, I think 26 to nothing. So they certainly covered that 7.5 points. I thought it'd be a little closer. Didn't expect the Titans to get shut out either. Rams beating and covering versus the Colts at home. Uh, that was a relatively close game up until the end. Rams kind of pulled away at the end, but give the Colts some respect. I mean, 3-1 going into LA playing the Rams when the Rams really should have beaten the Eagles, who are 4-0, considered, one of the best teams in the sport. So, all due respect to the Colts, I think that they've proved a lot so far this season, and we'll see how they play going forward. Jags beating the 49ers in San Francisco. Brock Purdy back. Of course not. He's out again this week. So we're going to have another week of Mac Jones. Uh, Jags winning here doesn't surprise me too much. 49ers are a little banged up. No Nick Bosa, no George Kittle. And the Jaguars have been playing good football. So I'm going to keep riding with the Jaguars train. Ravens, Chiefs, Baltimore by 2.5 in Kansas City. Kansas City won that game with ease. Lamar now 1-6 versus the Chiefs, which is a little surprising that he's unable to get over the hump. And of course, Lamar will be out the next couple weeks, I believe, with a quad issue. So it's certainly a tough loss for them. And of course, the NFL can't let the Chiefs go 1-3 in September. So I should have seen that one coming. Bears Raiders. Bears ended up winning by 1 point. I saw some lines that had the Raiders as 1.5 point favorites. Uh, so ESPN just didn't have that line, and the Bears only won by one, so I didn't cover there. But good game overall. Um, Very close game, and kind of the weirdest game of the week. And there shouldn't be ties in football. I think that the NFL should probably adopt the college overtime rules. Packers. So I'm now counting blue as a tie since I needed a new color. So blue is a tie. And of course, I had the Packers winning and covering the 6.5 point spread in Dallas, which of course they didn't. And somehow the Cowboys were able to score 40 points against the Packers defense, which was pretty surprising. I think the Cowboys have a solid offense, but without CeeDee Lamb being able to score 40 points versus a pretty complete defense is certainly impressive. Jets Dolphins, of course, we saw the Tyreek injury. I expected the Jets, of course, to win, which would have meant that they would have covered. And I just had some more faith in the Jets getting Justin Fields back, even though it's in Miami. And I should have went with the classic rule of if there's two bad teams, you take the home team. So I should have followed my own advice and done that in this instance. But it is what it is. And last one, Bengals Broncos on Monday night as well. Picked the Broncos to win. Of course they did. I thought 7.5 would be a lot of points. I expected Jake Browning to have a little bit better of a week. I had a little more faith in him, especially with Jamar and T. Higgins. They got blown out. They didn't cover 7.5 points. So another rough week versus the spread. 6-10 versus the spread this week again. So that leaves me under 500 versus the spread this year, which is pretty bad through 4 weeks at 30 and 34. Then Moneyline went 10-5-1 this week, ultimately being 41-22-1 straight up this season. So moving on to week 5, got 14 games this week. Finally, the first week with a couple buys, which is obviously unfortunate. We want as much football as possible. So tonight in Los Angeles, the Rams playing the 49ers, 49ers without Purdy again this week. So it's going to be the Mac Jones show. I think that the Rams certainly are one of the more underrated teams in the league in terms of what they're able to do and how they stack up versus some of the better teams in the league. And they're always right in the mix of things. I think the 49ers have been pretty scrappy. And I think Mac Jones has been decent when he's had to play. The couple times that he's had to play already this season. I think 8.5 is a lot of points. That's a lot of points to cover at home. So for that reason, and this is probably why I'm 6-10 every week versus the spread. I'm going to take the 49ers to cover just because I think it's for this, classic similar reasons. It's a divisional game. I don't think the 49ers are that bad. I do think that the Rams are certainly better. I could totally see them winning by a touchdown in which the 49ers still cover. So I think 8.5 is kind of a lot. And I don't think Mac Jones has played bad. I think he's been pretty much as good as Purdy has been in that system. So we'll see. But 49ers cover the 8.5 points. Rams win. Vikings, Browns, Minnesota by 3.5 in Cleveland. Of course, I believe we still have Carson Wentz. We definitely still have Carson Wentz. And we have Dylan Gabriel making his first start in the NFL in London versus a tenacious Vikings defense who really underperformed last week versus the absolute statue immobile Aaron Rodgers. So, with that being said, I'm going to take the Vikings both ways. And I don't think Dylan Gabriel's bad. I think that Joe Flacco is all right as well. Like, he was probably considered the worst starter in most cases, but I don't think you get much of a bump from Dylan Gabriel. Maybe inserting the rookie in invigorates the team. He's a little more mobile, but he's a little smaller. He's a little more fragile. And we'll see how he plays versus a very aggressive defense where their personnel match up a little better versus the Browns' passing personnel. Of course, you have Njoku, and you have Judy, and I expect them to have quite a few receptions, and I expect Judkins to have a bunch of carries. With that being said, I still think that the Vikings win. I still think that the Vikings cover. Should actually be an interesting game. The Browns have one of the best defenses in the league. I've been saying this all along. So total respect to them. I just don't have enough faith based upon the sample size to say that Carson Wentz is going to have a terrible week and that Dylan Gabriel is going to be able to put up enough points in order to keep it a close game. I could see this game being 17-14. Well, actually, that means that the Browns cover, but I think it'll be a close game. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna change it up just for the hell of it. Jackson Dart won his first start. Dylan Gabriel, maybe he gives us run for run for our money and actually keeps it close. But again, second guessing yourself. I mean, there are a lot of tight lines this week where it could really go kind of either way. But I'll change it up. Browns cover because I think the defense is that good, and the Vikings straight up win the game. Raiders Colts, 1 p.m. on Sunday. Colts by 6.5. The Raiders, of course, losing a close game to Chicago last week. Only win they've had has been against New England, and the Colts coming off their first loss of the season versus the Rams in LA. The Colts showing that they're one of the better teams in the league. I think that we can safely say that they are for real, which is pretty interesting. Did not expect that at all this season. And they they should be good. They should be rolling. Coming off the loss, they'll probably be fired up. Losing to a Rams team, really, in my opinion, that is really, really solid and among the best in the NFC. And they're two teams that don't play each other, so it's not like they have a lot of knowledge about the opponent. With that being said, I'm taking the Colts both ways because I don't have a serious amount of faith in the Raiders. Gino hasn't looked great. Ashton Genty finally having a good week, but has he found his rhythm? Is he really going to be able to absolutely gash the Colts? Even if he has a good game, I don't, and I don't think that he's going to necessarily get the volume of carries because I think that the Colts will go up and the Raiders will be forced to throw the ball, which really puts the game in Geno Smith's hands, in which I think that the Colts can certainly cover the spread because really they are better than the Bears, at least through the first 4 weeks of the season. Giants Saints. We've got the Saints by 1.5 in New Orleans. Saints have a decent defense. They've been okay. They've been very tenacious, putting up fights versus some solid teams. Jackson Dart, second start. Do we feel like the Giants are riding too high after their win versus the Chargers at home? Or are they reinvigorated? Do they have that spark to continue going? Or are they celebrating their Super Bowl by beating the Chargers last week? And I don't think Spencer Rattler's played bad. No Malik Neighbors for the Giants. This is probably the only game where the Saints are favored this season. With that being said, I hate doing it. I hate doing it. Giants, Giants. This one can really go either way. The Saints can really get, their first one of the season. Totally reasonable, totally possible. I think that the Giants pass rush will step up. I think this will be a lower scoring game. Dart has to find a way to protect himself and distribute the ball in a manner that is beneficial, obviously, for the team, but he's going to have to spread the ball around without having his true number one target, Malik Neighbors, which is unfortunate that he'll be without him for the rest of the season because they won't be able to really build any chemistry for the following year. So I think the Giants lost probably their best player, if not one of their best players. So with that being said, I'm still not going to pick the Saints to win. I'll take the Giants both ways. Could go either way. Cowboys, Jets. So the Cowboys going to New Jersey to play the Jets at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Cowboys by 2.5. The Jets still looking for their first win. It's tough because I want to pick the Jets. I mean, I don't. I would never like to, I would never willingly pick the Jets. Let me clarify that. I hate the Jets. Can't stand them. And I'm very happy that they haven't won since Super Bowl three. With that being said, the Cowboys defense still stinks, and the Jets have shown that they can put up some points. They didn't put up enough points versus the Miami defense, which also kind of stinks. And the Cowboys just put up 40 against one of the better defenses in the league in the Packers, one of the more complete defenses without their best player. So the rushing game actually has been good. Williams has been a very solid back so far this year for the Cowboys. And Dak has been very good when he plays. I understand the Dak hate. It's the popular thing to do to hate on the Cowboys, to hate on Dak Prescott, but I don't think Dak Prescott's that bad. Yeah, he just hasn't won in the playoffs, neither did Tony Romo. But you know what? At the time of retirement, Tony Romo was fourth all time for quarterback rating when he retired. And he still received all that hate, obviously, because he was unable to win in the postseason, which is still the same narrative with Dak. I get it. All of that coming back to the main point here. The Cowboys cover and the Cowboys win. The Jets just have been absolutely unable to get it done when they've had chances. And I think that they do have some talent on their team. And it's kind of surprising to me that they've been as bad as they've been because I think that they've left some wins on the table. But until they start taking advantage of those situations, it's difficult to pick them, especially versus a team that just tied tied the Packers, who are one of the best teams in the league. Eagles, Broncos, Sunday at 1. Philly by 3.5 in Philly. This one is pretty simple to me. I think it's going to be Eagles both ways. I have zero faith in Bo Nix. I've said this from day one. I don't have faith in Bo Nix. Oh, Colts are your survivor pool pick of the week. I'm taking them because I don't necessarily want to use the Lions yet, as we'll see. Oh, you know what? They're not. I lied. I lied. I'm going to save the Colts. I'm going to save the Colts. Sorry, I went back and forth on this a little while before on who I should pick. There's a couple clear picks for the survival pick. You got the Colts, and then two other teams down the line. Like I said, the Lions, potentially one of them. Lions are a team I'd like to save for a future date, and I'm going to do the same with the Colts. So, back to the Broncos Eagles. Don't have a lot of faith in Bo Nix. I think that the Broncos defense is solid. I think it'll be a lower, potentially scoring game, like low 20s to mid 20s. I think the Eagles have a solid defense. I think they'll be able to get the job done here. Win at home. I think they definitely win. I could see it being 24-20. I could see it being 27-20. I don't think that the Broncos have the capacity really to keep up with the Eagles. I think that they're able to win in any way they want. If they want to throw the ball, they'll throw the ball. They have the ability to protect Hurts. They certainly have the receiving personnel. And in the run game, they have arguably the best running back in the league. So even though Barkley hasn't quite lived up to that, maybe so far this year, he's still excellent. And obviously, Hurts can crush you with his legs as well. So, and they also have a deep backfield. So adding Tank Bigsby, and I don't think Will Shipley's that bad either. So I think that overall they're the more talented team. I think that they should win. Eagles won't go undefeated, but they certainly beat the Broncos this week, in my humble opinion, and they cover. Dolphins, Panthers, Miami by 1.5. No Tyreek for the Dolphins. Panthers at home, absolutely getting decimated last week, as we know, by the Patriots. Not even close. They had a good opening drive touchdown, and then after that, they were totally inept. I don't count the garbage time touchdown with Andy Dalton in the game. Dolphins are certainly a better team. And the Dolphins beat the Jets, who, yeah, Jets still need to win, but I definitely think that the Jets they're probably better than the Panthers. I give them that credit. They certainly have the top end talent. They have a good offensive line that's actually kind of completed. I don't think Breece Hall is bad. He's a good running back. Garrett Wilson's a great receiver. Uh, Obviously, Sauce Gardner has underperformed a little bit in the defense, but I feel like the team overall is kind of underperforming now, and they're losing those close situations. And I think that the Dolphins, they're they're all right. They're really struggling on the offensive line. How much do we expect Achane to do in the rushing game? That being said, uh, ugh, I hate doing this. I hate picking either one of these teams to win, honestly, because this one's another one that can go either way, in my opinion. I'm going to take the Dolphins to cover and to win. Texans Ravens Sunday at 1 in Baltimore. Houston by 2.5. Interesting. Their first win came against the Titans. Yeah, they shut them out, and it was, I don't know, 26 nothing, something like that. And the Ravens, they don't have Lamar Jackson this week. So I think that we'll see a lot more of Derrick Henry. We'll see a lot more of Justice Hill. Texans have one of the better defenses in the league. The Ravens will be starting Cooper Rush this week. The Ravens defense has also struggled. I mean, they've played some tougher opponents earlier in the schedule, like the Bills and the Chiefs. However, and the Lions for that matter. And the Lions. How could I forget about that? So I think that they're in a tough spot, certainly without Lamar. And I think that the Texans win. I think the Texans cover. But that's mostly, in my opinion, an indictment on Cooper Rush and playing in a new system. And I think that the Ravens do have the talent. However, I think without Lamar, we'll see a steep drop off in how their offense performs, and their defense has struggled. So I expect the Texans to play decently, and I could see it being like a 20-17 type of game in favor of the Texans. Titans Cardinals. Now, this is actually where I'm using my survivor pool pick. So we have Titans Cardinals in Arizona, Arizona by 7.5. I think that 7.5 points is a lot to cover. However, when I put it all together and piece the fact that the Cardinals are 2-2 without a couple key mistakes, they really could be 4-0. And you can say that about a lot of teams, but they lost a really close game to Seattle last week on Thursday that they could have won. And they lost last second to the 49ers in in San Francisco. So, with that being said, I think that the Cardinals come back kind of with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder after not underperforming the last couple weeks and really knowing that they have had a chance to do decently, and they just haven't. They're 2-2 and they're middling. And I think that if we're keeping it a buck, just like Cam Ward said, the Titans do stink. So I'm going to take the Cardinals. I'm going to take the Cardinals to cover, and I'm going to take the Cardinals to win. And I'm taking the Cardinals in my survivor pool this week just because not because I necessarily like the Cardinals. I think that like I said, they've stumbled at the finish line. They have not finished, and that's cost them 2 games already this season. And they're an okay team. I'd say they're middling in terms of what I expect them to do and what their talent level is, but I really think that the Titans are one of the worst teams in the league. So, with that being said, I definitely think that the Cardinals win this week. Buccaneers, Seahawks, Seattle by 3.5 in Seattle. And this one seemed interesting to me at first, but when I did a little deeper diving, because let's hammer the Bucks. I think the Bucks are a better team. I think the Bucks are a little more proven. However, no Mike Evans, no Bucky Irving, and the Seahawks defense has been very, very good this season. They've been tenacious. I think the Buccaneers cover. I certainly think they give it a really good effort, but I think in the end, the Seahawks end up winning. I think this will be a good game, even with the injuries. I feel like it kind of balances the teams out a little more because I think that the Buccaneers really are a better team if they're fully healthy, but they're pretty banged up right now. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Seahawks. And moving on, this would have potentially been my other survivor pool pick of the week, using up the Lions here versus the Bengals. Lions 10.5 points favorites on the road in Cincinnati. And with the way Jake Browning's played the last couple weeks and how good the Lions are on offense and defense, they're even without Ben Johnson, even without Aaron Glenn, they who's actually executing? It's the players. We understand that the wrinkles and the schemes and the things like that, yeah, that might help elevate to the ceiling a little more. But even if you take those guys out, they're still on paper one of the most talented teams in the NFL. So I don't understand the Lions hate. I never understood it coming into the season. Now, the Lions certainly take advantage of the Bengals without Joe Burrow, and they'll just stay on the gas no matter what. That's just how they are. So I totally expect the Lions to win and cover in this game. Commanders, Chargers. Chargers by 2.5, which is certainly a difficult game. Difficult game to pick. Joe Alt maybe not playing, which is tough. You already lost Rashawn Slater for the season, which was your left tackle. So you had your right tackle move to left tackle. Two of the best tackles in the league, period. And the Chargers defense is really, really good. I still have a lot of faith in them. And Jane Daniels coming off the injury back this week. Terry McLaurin still questionable for the week. Should play, but even still a little banged up. I think, and maybe it's just my bias against Washington. I don't believe in Washington like a lot of people do. Even if Daniels comes back, I think that it's a tall order to go into LA and at that to beat the Chargers when the Chargers really are a good team. They have good defense, good offense. I expect the Marion Hampton to have a pretty big game. And the Chargers really should be disgusted with their loss last week, which was typical Chargers loss fashion, and they should move on from that. And I think that they should beat Washington this week. They're, in my opinion, a better team, and we should see them win at home. Patriots Bills Sunday at 8:20. Buffalo by 7.5. This is going to be a very good game. Divisional opponents, teams kind of know each other a little better. Patriots coming off a huge, and by huge, I mean like score differential win versus the Panthers. I think most people expected them to beat the Panthers. They were favorites in that game at home, and they ended up winning, but in stamped 40 right on the Panthers' forehead. So they've, and at that, Drake made threw the ball like 20 times. So he didn't even really have to throw the ball that much. The Patriots had good special teams, of course, punt return by Marcus Jones into the end zone, another one that was pretty much there. He got tackled by the punter. The Bills not covering the last 2 weeks when they've had egregious spreads versus bad teams. And I think that the Bills aren't taking this lightly. I think it's a divisional game. I think it's Sunday night. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's a very interesting matchup when you think about the pass rush and how they work versus the Bills' offensive line. A couple good players on the offensive line there. And on the flip side, how the Patriots' offensive line inexperience, with Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, how they stack up versus Greg Rousseau and Joey Bosa. And then flip side, of course, how does the Patriots secondary contain the very diverse pool of targets that Josh Allen has? I think it will be an interesting matchup. I really do. And the Patriots have let up opening drive touchdowns 3 of the first 4 weeks, and that'll be a problem. I expect that to be a problem if you let Buffalo get ahead and you have to play catch up the whole game. The Bills can score so many points, and playing catch up against them is not a game that you want to play if you're the Patriots. I think the Patriots cover. I think it's a close game because I think that the Patriots are still, trying to kind of be consistently good. And I think Drake May's played very, very good the first couple weeks. And finally, the league's starting to take notice of someone who has almost 110 passer rating so far this season, someone that has improved in the turnover margin while still being able to be dynamic and put the ball in the end zone. And as long as the Patriots hold on to the ball, they didn't turn over the ball versus the Panthers. If they win the turnover battle, they don't commit stupid penalties, they could absolutely win this game. But I think it's a little too tall of a task to go into Buffalo and expect to beat the reigning MVP team that's undefeated on prime time. I fully expect it to be a back and forth game, a very good game. And I think that the Patriots pass rush, especially on the interior with Barmore and Williams, is a legit nightmare for pretty much any team that they're going to go up against. I mean, realistically, the Patriots potentially have the best defensive line in the entire league right now, and I don't think that's an egregious thing to say. I think the Bills win, but I certainly think it's close. I could see it being like a 34-31 type of game, 31-27 type of game. I think both of these teams have the capability to score points, and I think they both have very good defenses, very talented defenses, at least on paper. So I'm really, really excited for this one, honestly, as a Pats fan. It's going to be a hell of a game. And lastly, Chiefs Jaguars Monday, 8:15. And then we go from the Patriots Bills to, well, I mean, this game is pretty exciting. Chiefs chance to have a winning record this season right now. And by that I mean 2-2 to 3-2. Jaguars really should be undefeated. They lost that game last second, of course, versus Cincinnati in week 2 in Jacksonville. I think no Rashee Rice back yet. even with that being said, I think the Jaguars have taken a lot of people by surprise. I think that they're going to continue to roll, and I think that they win this game at home. I mean, I just simply I think that last week versus the Ravens was a one-off game for the Chiefs. I just don't have the faith in the Chiefs, and I have faith in the Jaguars. I think that they've surprised a lot of people. I think that they'll continue to do that. Beating San Francisco in San Francisco is a very difficult thing to do. Now, obviously, they're not the San Francisco of a couple of years ago. With that being said, they're no slouches, and I think the Chiefs have struggled at times. And I think the Jaguars kind of still are underdogs, obviously underdogs if you look at the spread, but to a lot of people, not really expecting a whole lot from them. And to be honest, I think that the Jaguars get it done here. But anyway, a lot of exciting games this week, a lot of good football ahead of us. Sad we only have 14 games. However, with that being said, um, let's get some wins, especially in this red column. We'll see how this shapes out. I'll see everyone next week and enjoy football while we have it.